Chapter 9. Shadows that Speak. There are places within us that light cannot reach. These are the spaces where our fears live, where our doubts gather, where the memories we dare not touch lie dormant. I used to believe these shadows were voids, empty, meaningless. I now know they are full, heavy with truths I was not yet ready to see. Shadows are not the absence of light. They are the meeting point between light and obstruction, the result of something standing in the way. To live with shadows is to live in the tension between fire and water, between what we show to the world and what we keep hidden, the silence of shadows. Shadows do not announce themselves. They do not clamor for attention the way fire does, nor do they carry the weight of water's currents. They exist quietly, in the background, waiting for you to notice them. For most of my life, I ignored my shadows. I saw them as flaws, as evidence of my failures, as parts of myself I should bury and forget. When the fire within me burned brightly, it was easy to pretend the shadows weren't there. The light of my ambition blinded me to the darkness that lingered at the edges, but shadows cannot be ignored forever. There was a time, not long ago, when my shadows grew too large to dismiss. The fire within me had burned out, leaving only ashes. The water had risen too high, drowning me in doubt. And in the stillness that followed, the shadows came forward. At first they terrified me. They whispered truths I didn't want to hear, showed me parts of myself I had worked so hard to hide. They reminded me of every mistake I had made, every opportunity I had missed, every wound I had inflicted or endured. But the shadows were not there to hurt me. They were there to show me what I needed to see. The truth in the darkness. Shadows are not lies. They are not distortions. They are truths we have hidden from ourselves. Truths we are not yet ready to face. When I began to sit with my shadows, to listen to what they had to say, I realized they were not my enemies. They were my teachers. They showed me the cost of my fire, the relationships I had burned, the moments I had rushed through, the parts of myself I had neglected in my relentless pursuit of more. They showed me the depth of my water, the doubts I had avoided, the fears I had suppressed, the reflections I had been too afraid to see. And they showed me something else, the strength I carried, the resilience I had developed, the growth that had come from every storm I had weathered, the weight of shadows. To live with shadows is to carry their weight. It is to feel the pull of the past, the burden of the truths we have tried to ignore. For years, I carried this weight without realizing it. It manifested in small, insidious ways, in the hesitation before starting something new, in the self-doubt that crept in during moments of stillness, in the way I avoided looking too closely at my own reflection. But the weight of shadows is not meant to crush us. It is meant to ground us. I think of a tree, its roots buried deep in the earth. Those roots are its shadows, its connection to the unseen, the parts of itself that exist in darkness. Without those roots, the tree could not stand. The same is true of us. Our shadows are not weaknesses. They are the foundation that allows us to grow, the shadows of others. Just as I carry my own shadows, so too do the people around me. I see their shadows in the way they pause before speaking, in the way their eyes flicker with unspoken thoughts, in the moments when their light falters. We are taught to hide our shadows, to present only our brightest selves to the world. But in doing so, we lose something vital. There is a connection that comes from sharing our shadows, from allowing ourselves to be seen not just in our light, but in our darkness. I think of a friend who once shared her shadows with me. She spoke of her fears, her regrets, the parts of herself she had always kept hidden. Her voice trembled as she spoke, her words hesitant, unsure, but in that moment, I saw her more clearly than I ever had before. Her shadows did not diminish her, they made her whole. And as I listened, I found myself sharing my own shadows, the truths I had been too afraid to speak aloud. It was not an easy conversation, but it was a necessary one. The light in the darkness. Shadows cannot exist without light. They are not the absence of light, but its counterpart, its complement. When I began to embrace my shadows, I found that they were not as dark as I had feared. Within their depths, there was light, subtle, quiet, but present, nonetheless. This light did not come from outside, it came from within, from the parts of myself I had hidden away. It was the light of resilience, of strength, of growth. The shadows had not extinguished my light, they had revealed it. The dance of shadows. The dance between fire and water is incomplete without shadows. They are the space where the two meet, where their contradictions collide, where their truths merge into something greater. To live with shadows is not to fight them, but to dance with them. It is to move with their rhythm, to listen to their truths, to let them guide you toward a deeper understanding of yourself. I think of the ocean at night, its surface dark and infinite, its depths unknowable. But even in that darkness, there is light, the glimmer of the moon on the waves, the phosphorescence that sparks beneath the surface. The same is true of my shadows. They are not empty, they are full of light, full of truth, full of the pieces of myself I am still learning to embrace. Living with shadows. To live with shadows is to live with truth. It is to see yourself not as you wish to be, but as you are flawed, complex, whole. It is to carry the weight of your past without letting it define your future. It is to embrace the darkness without losing sight of the light. It is to understand that the shadows are not separate from you. They are a part of who you are, a part of what makes you human. The shadows of memory. Shadows do not simply emerge from nowhere. They are shaped by our experiences, by the moments we cannot forget, by the choices we cannot undo. Memory is the root of every shadow, its weight carried forward even when we try to leave it behind. There are memories I have avoided for years, moments I have locked away in the corners of my mind, hoping they would fade if left untouched. But shadows do not disappear when ignored, they grow. I remember a particular shadow, one I carried with me for far longer than I realized. It began as a simple mistake, a decision made in haste, driven by the fire of ambition and the pressure to succeed. At the time, it felt small, insignificant, but as the years passed, it grew, its weight pressing down on me in ways I could not name. It was not the mistake itself that haunted me, but the way I refused to face it, the way I let it define me without ever speaking its name. When I finally confronted this shadow, when I allowed myself to sit with it and listen to what it had to say, I discovered something unexpected. The shadow was not accusing me. It was not there to punish me. It was simply a reflection of my own fear, my own guilt, my own humanity. The power of naming. There is a power in naming your shadows. To name them is to give them shape, to transform them from something amorphous and overwhelming into something you can hold, examine, and understand. For years, I avoided naming my shadows because I believed they were too vast, too terrifying. I thought that to give them a name would be to give them power, but the truth is the opposite. When I began to name my shadows, I found that they were not as monstrous as I had imagined. They were not voids, not flaws, not failures. They were parts of myself that had been waiting to be acknowledged. One by one, I named them fear of failure, fear of being seen, fear of not being enough. These were not abstract concepts. They were truths I had carried with me for as long as I could remember, truths that had shaped my choices, my relationships, my sense of self. And as I named them, I felt their weight begin to shift. They were still there, still present, but they no longer controlled me. The shadows we share. Shadows are deeply personal, but they are also universal. The fears, doubts, and wounds we carry are not unique to us. They are part of the human experience, part of the collective ocean of shadow and light that connects us all. There is a friend I have known for years, someone whose shadows mirror my own in ways that are both comforting and unsettling. We have never spoken explicitly about our shared fears, but there is an unspoken understanding between us, a quiet recognition of the shadows we both carry. In her presence, I feel less alone. Her shadows reflect mine, and mine reflect hers, creating a connection that goes deeper than words. To share your shadows with someone else is one of the most vulnerable acts you can undertake. It is to say, "This is who I am in all my imperfections. Do you see me? Do you accept me?" And when the answer is yes, I see you. Yes, I accept you. The shadows lose some of their power. The weight of generational shadows. Shadows are not always ours alone. They are passed down, carried from generation to generation, shaping us in ways we do not always understand. I see this most clearly in my family. My parents, my grandparents, they carried their own shadows, their own fears and traumas, many of which they never spoke aloud. These shadows lived in the spaces between their words, in the pauses of their conversations, in the unspoken rules and expectations that governed our lives. For years, I resented these shadows. I saw them as burdens, as weights I had not chosen to carry. But now, I see them differently. These generational shadows are not curses, they are legacies. They are the truths my ancestors could not name, the wounds they could not heal, passed down to me, not as punishments, but as opportunities. It is my responsibility to name these shadows, to sit with them, to transform them into something new. The shadows of creativity. For every act of creation, there is a shadow. For every fire that burns brightly, there is a darkness that lingers at its edges, whispering doubts, casting reflections we would rather not see. I feel this most acutely in my own creative work. Each time I sit down to write, to create, to shape something new, the shadows appear. This isn't good enough. You'll never finish this. Why bother? These shadows do not disappear with time or experience. They are always there, waiting to remind me of every failure, every moment of uncertainty. But I have learned to see these shadows not as obstacles, but as part of the process. They are not there to stop me. They are there to guide me, to challenge me, to push me towards something deeper and more authentic. The light in the darkness. It is easy to see shadows as purely negative, as forces to be overcome, as evidence of our flaws and failures. But shadows are not only darkness, they are also light. Every shadow is born from a source of light. It exists because something is standing in its way, creating the contrast that allows us to see more clearly. When I began to embrace my shadows, I found that they were not voids, but spaces of transformation. They were the places where light and darkness met, where truth and fear collided, where I could discover new parts of myself. The light in the shadows is not always obvious. It is subtle, quiet, often hidden beneath layers of doubt and fear, but it is there, waiting to be uncovered. Living with shadows. To live with shadows is to live with complexity. It is to accept that we are not wholly light or wholly dark, but a mixture of both. It is to carry the weight of our past without letting it define our future. It is to embrace the truths we have hidden, the fears we have avoided, the parts of ourselves we are still learning to love. Shadows are not our enemies, they are our companions, our guides, our connection to the deeper truths of who we are. Shadows, they linger at the edges of our awareness, subtle and unassuming until we turn to face them. Then they stretch and deepen, taking shape and form, reminding us of truths we would rather forget. For years, I thought my shadows were flaws, mistakes to be erased, or imperfections to be overcome. I believed that the brighter my fire burned, the smaller my shadows would become. But shadows are not flaws, they are not imperfections, they are the meeting place of light and truth. They're evidence of what stands between who we are and who we wish to be. The shadows we create. Not all shadows are inherited. Some are born from the choices we make, the mistakes we carry, the moments we wish we could undo. I remember one such shadow vividly. It was during my final year of university, a time when the fire of ambition burned so brightly within me that it blinded me to everything else. I was working on a project I believed would define my future, a research paper that consumed my thoughts, my time, my energy. A close friend, someone who had supported me through countless challenges, reached out during this time. She was struggling, though she didn't say so directly. Her voice on the phone was subdued, her words hesitant. "Can we talk?" she asked, her tone heavy with something unspoken. But I was too busy, too focused on my fire. "Not now," I said, brushing her off. "Maybe later." Later never came. A week passed, then two, and I heard nothing from her. When I finally called, she didn't answer. When I texted, her replies were short and distant. It wasn't until months later that I learned the truth. During that time, she had been facing a storm of her own, one that I could have helped her weather if only I had stopped to notice. This moment became a shadow, one I carried with me long after the project was finished, long after the accolades it earned had faded. It whispered to me in moments of stillness, reminding me of the cost of my fire, of the connection I had let slip away. The shadow did not judge me. It simply showed me the truth that I had chosen ambition over presence, success over connection, and it offered me a choice to continue running from its weight or to let it teach me how to do better. The shadows of others. Just as we carry our own shadows, we often encounter the shadows of those around us. These shadows are not always visible, but they make themselves known in subtle ways, in the pauses before a response, in the guardedness of a smile, in the unspoken tension that fills the spaces between words. I think of a colleague I once worked with, a man whose fire was so bright it seemed to light up every room he entered. He was charismatic, driven, endlessly ambitious, but there was a shadow beneath his fire, one he rarely allowed anyone to see. It appeared in moments of stillness, in the way his gaze would linger on the horizon, as if searching for something he could never reach. It appeared in the way he avoided conversations about his family, brushing off questions with practiced ease. One evening, after a long day of work, he opened up to me. Over drinks, his polished exterior cracked, and the shadow emerged. He spoke of a childhood marked by instability, of a father who had left and a mother who had struggled to provide. His fire, he admitted, was both a shield and a coping mechanism, a way to prove to himself and the world that he was enough. His shadow did not make him weaker, it made him human. The light in the shadows. There is a strange beauty in shadows, a quiet light that exists within their depths. It is not the bright blazing light of fire, nor the reflective clarity of water. It is a subtler light, one that reveals itself only when we are willing to sit in the darkness and wait. I have found this light in my own shadows, in the truths they have shown me, and the strength they have helped me uncover. One such truth is this: the parts of myself I have tried to hide are not weaknesses. They are the source of my resilience, my empathy, my connection to others. Another truth: the shadows I carry are not mine alone. They are part of a larger collective darkness that connects us all, the collective shadow. As individuals, we each carry our own shadows, but as a society, we also carry collective shadows, truths we would rather avoid, mistakes we refuse to acknowledge, wounds we have yet to heal. These collective shadows manifest in the way we treat one another, in the systems we build, in the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and who we want to be. I see these shadows in the divisions that separate us, in the fears that drive us, in the injustices we perpetuate. They are vast and heavy, and it can be tempting to ignore them, to pretend they are not there. But just as with personal shadows, the only way to move forward is to confront them, to name them, to let them speak. Living with shadows. To live with shadows is to live with complexity. It is to accept that light and darkness coexist within us, that we are shaped as much by our fears as by our hopes, as much by our failures as by our successes. It is to understand that our shadows are not our enemies. They are our guides, our teachers, our connection to the deeper truths of who we are. Noise that lives inside. Silence is not the absence of noise. True silence, the silence we imagine exists in remote monasteries or between the stars, does not visit people like me, not those of us built from fire and unraveled by water. In our world, silence is just the background for noise we cannot mute, because the loudest noise is internal. It is not the clang of external chaos. It is the whisper that never stops, the hum of uncertainty, the looping reel of past conversations, imagined failures, unresolved echoes. This is not metaphor. It is the actual condition of my daily life. There is never quiet, even when the room is still, even when I close the door, turn off the lights, disconnect from the outside world. Something inside keeps speaking, and it does not ask for permission. It is easy to romanticize the mind, to speak of consciousness as clarity, as evolution, as a gift. But the mind, unguarded, can be a torturer, and the noise it produces is not random. It knows exactly what to play. Memories I would rather forget, fears I cannot name, images I never consciously imagined. It does not announce its playlist, it loops what it wants. And the volume, somehow, always increases when I am most vulnerable. There is a particular cruelty in a brilliant mind that cannot rest. I don't say this as boast. Intelligence, in this context, is not an advantage. It is just more machinery, more capacity to ruminate, more elaborate justifications for pain, more eloquence in the narratives of despair. I have weaponized my own mind against myself more times than I can count, and each time it does so with such precision that I cannot argue. That is the worst part. The noise often speaks with my own voice. It gets louder at night. That is not poetic exaggeration. It is physics. When external sound recedes, internal sound surges forward. The mind abhors a vacuum. It fills the darkness with everything I have not resolved. What did I say yesterday? Why did I pause during that conversation? Did I offend? Was that moment a mistake? I replay events from years ago as if they happened 5 minutes prior. I edit them, revise them, rescript them until even my regrets are exhausted. But they never sleep. They rise again the next night, freshly rehearsed. I have tried silence rituals, meditation, white noise machines, nature sounds, breath work, all of it. Nothing quiets the noise, because the noise is not in the world, it is in me. And the worst part is, some part of me believes I need it, that if the noise stops, I will too, that without the constant hum of self-surveillance, I might dissolve. There is a rhythm to it now, a pulse I have come to recognize. It begins in the chest, a tightening, a narrowing of breath. Then the mind starts to loop. And once the loop begins, it will run until I intervene. Sometimes that means distraction. Sometimes that means writing. Sometimes that means walking for hours until my legs outpace my brain. But the cost is always the same, presence. The noise steals it. It takes me out of the moment and into the theater of what if. It pulls me from connection, from joy, from rest, and I follow, obedient. I used to envy people who could relax, who could sit in a chair and simply be, who didn't require noise to anchor them, who didn't equate stillness with failure. I have never been able to rest without guilt, never been able to slow down without interrogation, never been able to exist without explaining myself to the voice inside. It is a voice trained by years of pressure, by an education that valued performance above well being, by families who equated love with approval, by systems that reward noise because silence is unprofitable. But I have begun to speak back. Not always, not well, but enough. I challenge the noise. I ask it to name its sources. I demand it show me evidence. Sometimes it cannot. Sometimes it retreats. Other times it doubles down. It reminds me of every weakness, every forgotten slight, every deviation from the person I'm supposed to be. But that too is information. The noise reveals what I'm still holding. There are moments now, brief, rare, when I sense quiet beneath the noise. Not absence, but space. And in those moments, I try to linger. I do not reach for productivity. I do not perform gratitude. I do not analyze the silence. I simply allow. And that is something, because the noise may live in me, but I do not have to live for it. Some nights, I sit on the floor with the lights off and listen, not to the noise, to what exists underneath. The breath, the heartbeat, the body's insistence on continuing. It is not peace, but it is proof, and proof is enough. Final reflection for chapter 9. The shadows within us are not voids to be feared or flaws to be fixed. They are truths to be embraced, parts of ourselves that hold the light we have yet to see. To those who carry shadows within you, let them speak. Let them show you the truths you have hidden, the strength you have overlooked, the light you carry within. The shadows are not the end, they are the beginning.